Making sure that the car is completely off, you're going to press the ignition twice. 1, 2. You're going to press down on the park brake. At the same time, you're also going to press your foot firmly down on the gas pedal. Then press the ignition 3 times. 1, 2, 3. You're going to hear the park brake back off. Then you can press the ignition button one more time to shut the car off completely. Here's the parking brake symbol to show that you are in maintenance mode. With the car jacked up, safely jacked up that is, and your wheel off, you're going to need a 14mm wrench or socket to take off the caliper bolts. These might be on there pretty good, so you might have to use a bit of muscle. Once the caliper bolts are off, you can remove the caliper itself. Make sure not to let it hang by the brake line hose or anything like that. You want to secure it. It didn't really show securing it, but it is here on the secured to the spring using a zip tie. Using the 14mm wrench again, you'll want to take off the caliper bracket bolts. These are on there pretty good, so a lot of force will be needed. And it took a little while because of rust, but I did eventually get them off. Once the bolts are off, you can see you can slide the caliper bracket off, and you can notice how bad the brakes were on this CX-5. Here I am removing the rotor and just inspecting it, documenting it, just to see how the condition of it is. You want to move the slide pins or inspect them to see how much grease is on them. These ones actually had a sufficient amount of grease, but I decided anyways to take them out, clean them up one extra time. On this particular CX-5, you have the a rubber bushing on the bottom pin, so just keep note of that. Then I use a wire brush to clean them, and then a Scotch-Brite pad there to also aid in the cleaning of the rust as well. You want to use a good brake lubricant. I'm using silicone, resists water, and I put a liberal amount on. I usually put some right in the boot, so as I push the slide in, it captures that or collects that grease. And then just put a lot on the pins itself. So here's the brake pad clips or shims that put into the caliper bracket. Sometimes you have to remove some rust. I was lucky that I didn't. I just clipped them in. Unfortunately, the video didn't show this. But after you put them in, I usually put some brake grease on them to allow the brake pads to slide a bit smoother. Right, so here I am putting the grease on the ends of the pad, or the ears of the pad, so they slide well in the caliper bracket. Again, staying with the Rubestis themes, I using their rotor as well. I'm in a rust belt area, so I for sure use the coated rotors when I can. I like to coat the face of the hub with some anti-seize. Just makes life a little easier the next time, if there's a next time I have to do the brakes or change a wheel. Here's a little trick to keep the rotor in place. I didn't have a lug nut that was long enough to keep the rotor from shifting on me, so I grabbed a closed end wrench, put it over one of the lug studs there, and then I tightened my lug nut down, just hand tight, but it keeps the rotor in place. And just like that, the caliper bracket is installed. No, I accidentally forgot to press record there, but essentially it's just sliding it over in the correct position and putting the bolts on, tighten them up. I'll try to put a torque spec on the screen there. And here comes the fun part of compressing the caliper piston back. I don't have the special tool for it, so I have some slip jointed pliers. The main thing you'd want to do is find something solid, not the plastic backing of the park brake motor. You want to go off metal to metal, preferably the body of the caliper. You'll see here that I sneak it behind where the banjo bolt goes, and just slowly compress the piston back. I also open the master cylinder underneath the hood just to let the brake fluid rise up or come back. Just go slow and it'll be fine. The main thing to take away from this is that you don't want to rotate the piston in the caliper itself. It has notches that fit that align onto the pad, and also if you do rotate it, you could risk breaking the electronic park brake itself. So just push it straight back. And once you've completely pushed the piston back far enough, I like to put dabs of the silicone grease, brake grease, where the caliper itself and the piston are going to contact the pads. Just gets rid of any vibration or possible vibration. It's just something I've always done, just a habit now. Carefully align the bolt holes up on the caliper to the caliper bracket. Insert the bolts and then tighten away. Again, I'll put a torque spec on screen if I can. Also important to note that you want to remove any rust that could be hitting the rotor. Um, I'm in a rust belt, so it's expected, but just make sure the backing plate isn't nothing's really contacting the rotor, so you don't get any funny noises. Once everything is tightened and torqued up, I like to just take a screwdriver and kind of just turn the rotor or the hub on its own to see if there's any wacky noises. So much the same way as turning it on. what you do is you have your car completely off and you turn the ignition on to pressing it twice. Then you pull up on the park brake this time, pushing your foot right down to the gas pedal, or the gas pedal right down. You press the ignition 3 times. You'll hear the motors adjust, and then your light should go out, and you should be set. Put your wheel back on, tighten the wheel down, lower your vehicle, and go for a drive.